All right, welcome to topic 5. We're talking about individual planning. This wraps up our module. And so individual planning is important because one thing about, right, how do we kind of determine the appropriate insurance amount, right? The death benefits, the face value, right? So the first approach is the human life value approach. So we kind of approximate the money that a person has earned over his or her lifetime to determine the face amount of insurance needed, right? So if you have earned more money, maybe you need less face amount, right? Or because your children won't be financially won't be in a financially difficult situation, right? If you already have many existing assets, for example, right? But with number two, it's based on the needs approach, right? So we kind of identify instead of how much one has earned, we look about the needs of the individual, right? We think about, well, okay, this person has two children, right? They need education, right? They need college education, they need housing, how much for housing, right? How much housing funds do they need? With the needs-based approach, we can also look at the emergency reserve fund, right? And I mentioned this in other topics, right? How, okay, well, what if an emergency occurs, right, in the future, and how can the cash values, right, help cover that, right? We look at the needs of the individual instead of what the individual currently has or has earned already. Okay, so this one we're kind of looking at the future needs, right, of the individual's family, right, the dependents as a whole. Okay, now with this, right, as I said, okay, I recommend going over this statement, right? And again, this is really, really helpful, right? Looking at the needs of that individual. And most cases, the needs approach is the most helpful, right? Because we're trying to identify, we're looking into the future, right? We're looking into the future to determine the appropriate coverage instead of looking at existing assets, right? Because even if you might or have a lot, right, there might be a lot you need in the future. You might be planning to have kids. You might have many other situations that you need to handle, which those funds might not be enough, right? So it's always better to look in the future and look at future needs, right? Because retirement can be expensive. Schooling for children can be really expensive, right? So as I said, the needs approach is the foundation of a sound and appropriate product recommendation. And here, right, here's a really good WFG feature that I want to make. The website is showing you, right, when you, the agent, are working with the client, right, you want to consider these questions based on the needs approach, right? More the long and short-term debt, right? Looking at the future, what are the long-term goals, right? How much income will be needed, right? For how many years, right? How much you want to set for a funeral costs and or emergency reserve fund, right? This is also important, right? How many assets do you have, right? How much do you need in the future, right? So we can see that this really ties everything in, and this is really a useful piece of information for us to think about, right? When we're thinking about planning using the needs-based approach. Okay, all right. So that's all for module 2. And I hope everyone goes through some of those questions, reviews, use the flow chart, use the charts I've attached in the previous videos, and best of luck studying through the types of life insurance policies.